Hello world of YouTube and welcome to my picks for the 20 best albums to drop this decade so far. A decade that has had, on a worldwide scale, loads of calamity and chaos, but has wrought out a lot of records that, in some instances, act like a wonderful portrait displaying these troubled times, and the other being pieces of trends that just really get it right, so to speak. Either way, there's a lot of great stuff I'll be talking about this video. Give it a like if you're excited, and let's go ahead and get started by talking about...
We go from Lyra to Libra, from cold water to fever, to World War III, from the treaty signed in Geneva, the biology...
Creative crockpots in hip-hop aren't necessarily anything new for the genre, but this decade has had some interesting link-ups of sorts, with rapper-producer collab records that have this Rolodex of features that make for an interesting portrait that is fun to listen to, and I think that my favorite amongst that crop so far this decade is easily Black Thought and Danger Mouse's Cheat Codes. I think that the production palette that Danger Mouse pulls together further showcases why he may still be a beloved producer. He needs to be more in the conversation for just consistent producers, because this sounds magnificent. It's a great backdrop for Black Thought to weave his just eloquent, really well-constructed, veteran-style rhymes together over. And the feature list is an interesting meeting of worlds, because you have 2010s big acts like Joey Badass and A$AP Rocky coming together with vets like Raekwon and Doom, which in itself is like a Danger Doom rekindling that I absolutely love. This was an on-site record for me because I love what it's got going on so very much. Cheat Codes is aptly named because it's a cheat code for being goated, in my opinion.
That's my flight. I'm coming back to the party and I won't.
I'm so happy to see Magdalena Bay get their flowers. I just talked about this album recently, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this or any other 2024 records. But even 6 months removed, I've seen this record continue to garner more and more hype. And I think it's absolutely deserved. Spoilers for something that's linked in the description, but I've got a top 50 of the decade so far, and both of their records are on there, because they are a two-piece of well-produced, absolute bliss that I think is absolutely worth all the hype that people throw towards them.
What everybody knows.
While I think Beach House have been on an incredible run in their discography as a whole, Once Twice Melody is the kind of nurtured feeling that I don't think is lost in double albums, but I think with this album in particular has this approach that feels more old school in its creative scope, and I adore that about it. I think that they made some really beautiful and infectious songs throughout this double album experience that I think takes a lot of the dreamlike ideas that I love about them and a lot of their highs and just goes the distance with it in some truly wonderful, captivating ways.
Said it's the end of days, and we're just hoping for the beachfront property.
This year and 2020 are two different flavors of depressing and bleak, and that time away from 2020 and what I've really kept with me throughout these years I think has really shaped where my favorites have been sort of reassessed, so to speak. Because Brave Faces Everyone is not the only album from 2020 on this list, but this was my album of the year that it came out. Just like a lot of my contemporaries, we all kind of collectively resonated with the almost acceptance to the shitstorm that was raining down upon us, that feels like the spirit of this album, and I still really love that about it. The songs themselves are also just fiery and really have this ignition to them that I think still really resonates with me, but it's not a record that I revisit as much as other records from 2020 that admittedly did rank higher up on this list. I still think this album is a smash, and I think that it, you know, especially considering where they took their sound with No Joy, is a nice nugget of them at their more intimate, which I think makes their lyrics, you know, fieriness burn all the brighter. This album is a smash, still worth it, and I absolutely adore it.
Flick my shitty lighter and pull smoke from the one hitter on the doorstep.
As someone who's been following Jeff Rosenstock since his Bomb the Music Industry days, I'm really glad to see him continue to adapt and age gracefully. I think he's writing some incredible stuff this decade. It's still very direct in a way that I love about his songwriting, but he's tapping into a bit more of an emotional depth that I think really works well for his style and his songwriting abilities. I love his run that he's been going on, and Hell Mode is easily my favorite thing he's dropped this decade. I think that it has a fieriness that adds a little more of that punk to the older punk that was resonating throughout, that was coded throughout the No Dream, Ska Dream era. But I love Hell Mode. I think that it is incredible, and I think that it is like a great example of past millennial misery really getting its showcase from a really strong songwriter.
The flames ain't shit to a demon. Say the name.
I listened to this album and its companion record from 2019, There Exists an Addiction to Blood, every October. I love what Clipping are doing on this record too, along with There Exists an Addiction to Blood. But Visions of Bodies Being Burned takes some of that, like, we're going to experiment with some, like, spooky ideas, and really doubles down on them in a way that I think is a great love letter to horror as a genre in some instances, some truly sinister shit from a songwriting perspective, and sees them sonically making just some generally uncomfortable things that I think really fit the horror world splendorously. I absolutely love There Exists an Addiction to Blood. I absolutely love Visions of Bodies Being Burned. I think that as a continued evolution for Clipping as a group as well, it's a really cool place for them to sort of evolve their sound and really try to go further with it, so to speak. And I do think that they do go the distance when going further.
I want you to come get lost with me. Ask you one more time.
I made a video talking about this album, specifically this and the estate sale version, and why I think it may or may not, as of recording this, still be Tyler, the Creator's best album. I really love Call Me If You Get Lost. I think that it is a great evolution for Tyler still, and I got enough of me yapping on this and the internet. I think this album is still worth it. It's easily one of my favorite album rollouts of the decade, considering we've had some really interesting ones, especially in recent years. The fact that he came back to this era and really gave it a proper send-off is something special, in my opinion.
Did you
Personal love for parts of this aside, I re-listened to this recently with Rachel because of that reason, and it is just such a smooth, beautiful listen. I think that Billy's evolution this decade has been magical. I think that she has an incredible voice, and I love that she showcases it on here. I think Phineas makes a great backdrop and makes just everything sound so fucking clean on here. I love this album. It's like recency bias, you could say, but I think that, I mean, this is just phenomenal. Very potently lovey in a way that is just simple but effective and grand in a beautiful way. I'll be talking about Turnstile's newest in the listening log next week, don't worry. But Glow On is obviously going to come up in that review, and to get it out of the way, I do fucking love this album. I love Turnstile as a whole, though. If you don't know that, now you do. And I think that, I guess, especially now, this is a perfect bridge from what got me into them to what at least they're doing on Never Enough. I love this album. I think it sounds mint. I think that the band is evolving gracefully here, and I adore this album. I'll talk about it more next week.
I'm a mad pack man, living in a leveled world. Everywhere I
Gorillaz records have always been a sort of creative crockpot of sorts that I mentioned being a trend in hip-hop in recent years with the rapper-producer collab records. But Song Machine in particular is an interesting instance of it really benefiting them while we were stuck in quarantine, the group was doing this rollout of these singles that saw them coming together with these artists, bringing people with these cartoons and Gorillaz tradition and fashion, but it just really hit different during those times. And it helps that the record itself, I think, is still one of their best records, and the Gorillaz are one of my favorite bands, so you probably could have assumed this was going to end up on this list. But I absolutely love the ideas that are circling on here, both in the veins of them expanding on their hip-hop inspired roots with collabs with Schoolboy Q and Beck, and they're melding with vets like Elton John and Robert Smith. The other pop-driven stuff as well is just as well executed. This is just a great batch of songs from the group, and I still get a lot of mileage of it 5 years later.
Nigga said it, I can't. Damn lie, ain't dapping no hand. Sanitize, don't slide on your man. Landslide, there's a 9 in my pants.
I think J.I.D. on The Forever Story taps into the same type of artistry that records like Kendrick were doing on albums like Good Kid, Mad City, but does it in a little bit more of an abstract sort of way. I absolutely love the production on this thing. I think it is clean as fuck and has these glimpses into some of the niche memories that have stuck with J.I.D. as he's continued to accelerate his fame to higher highs. I think that it's an interesting look back from the top that really creates for an interesting set of songs. I think his bar spinning is insane on here. While there have been songs from this that have stayed in my rotation all these years later, because he's got a new album on the horizon, I've been wanting to spin this more and more because I just have been hyped to hear him follow up what I think is easily a phenomenal showcase of growth for an artist that was already starting off incredibly strong, but it showed on this record that he could really hit some real highs. I'm glad that 10,000 Gecs is still getting more fans as the years are passing, because this album is the best kind of postmodern. It is postmodern with a purpose, which I know is a bit of a paradoxical phrase, but it is. 100 Gecs are a group that very much make music that is aware that it is a bit absurd in sonic approach, but it sounds good doing so, and there's a bit more to it to chew on if you really sort of dive through the Geck-filled pool. I love this record, though. It has the sort of hodgepodge ideology that I liked from their debut, but gives it a bit more of a reining in while not losing sight of the madness and upping the scale at the same time. This sort of proper sophomore record that a group like this should have, and I hope that these two continue to push their own boundaries and just make some truly out there shit.
'Cause I'm not getting tired.
Very much a right place, right time album for me personally. I talked about that in my Album of the Year video, and I still feel that way about By the Time I Get to Phoenix. But even from a sonic perspective, there's a lot about this in the dissonance and the sadness purged and the density and abstractness that I keep coming back to in this record still. You know, there are some moments of catchiness in the haze, but there is a haziness to this record that I think Living In is a really interesting spin. They really capture sonic brain fog in a truly magical way. Obviously, I'm excited for By Storm's eventual full-length drop to come out, and I've reviewed Richie's album from last year, because I think that there's still a good creative twosome here. But I think that as far as sending off the moniker of Injury Reserve, By the Time I Get to Phoenix does so in a really nice creative finale of sorts.
No, now we all just running rounds and fitting pieces to the puzzle, my nigga. Got some fellas that the music.
Denzel Curry's already an incredibly consistent artist, but My Eyes See Your Future is absolutely him creating the same focus he did on a record like Imperial, bringing in a menagerie of artists to elevate those ideas to another level and work with producers to make a sonic palette that just gives it this flow that is incredible. This might be his best release, but it sees like a mellowing of his very aggressive bar spinning that showcases his pen game in a different light that I think is still incredibly strong. I think that as far as having another interesting Rolodex, this is another really cool meeting of the minds. It's just not quite as colossal or as like unified as a record like Cheat Codes. It's in a lane all its own, and obviously I like it a lot more comparatively, but My Eyes See Your Future is a modern classic, as are obviously the stuff that I'm going to be going above this, but give this time and it's still going to keep aging like fucking wine.
Life hard, but I go harder. Life hard, but I go harder.
I can't hear you.
Life hard, but I go harder.
I can't hear.
Yeah, I put Dark Times above Imaginal Disc now because I can't stop spinning this record. It is the best kind of lightning in a bottle that I think Vince just really made some magic with. We're going to be flying through these next two because you're going to get a sense of deja vu here, given I talked about some of these records only 6 months ago. But yeah, Dark Times still slaps. I absolutely love this album.
Hey, Roman numeral 7, babe, drop it like it's hot. If this world was mine, I'd take your dreams and make them multiply.
Equally so, anytime I throw on this record, I blink and I'm at Gloria. This album is infectious. It is one of those records that you start and you just can't stop. Kendrick, when he can really rein it in, he can just make some absolute smashes. And this is a further cementing of that.
I'm with my own way and I made it. I'm your favorite reference, baby. Call me February. You're so insane.
Rest in peace to the Brad era. But that era was fucking great, right?
Let's come on down. But everybody just deny.
Algiers are going to go down as one of my favorite bands in the last 10 years. Incredible live act. I think that they have an incredibly consistent discography. While I love some of their records more than others, they haven't made anything that is wholly bad. And Shook is the culmination of their growth and divergence into a further evolution that also has a well-nuanced concept beneath it all. I think that a lot of the collaborators on here add a lot to the pot as well and make for a record that is dense with ideas, but I think is executed masterfully. I think that if you want to see what experimental music can really be when it comes to blending genres and doing so with such harmony and the dissonance, Shook is absolutely that album. I love the way this album is written from a lyrical and sonic perspective. Absolute banger of a band with a classic in Shook.
I don't wanna be down. I don't wanna be found. I don't wanna be down. I don't wanna be.
Recency bias! I made this my album of the year last year, and it's still maybe Tyler's best, and actually, now that he's talked more about the album, acts as the other side of the coin that is my favorite album, considering he was making this at around the same time. Insane work by Tyler from a production perspective. It is a further showcasing of his own growth. I think that it is a very mature album that has this deeper layer to it that creates an even more personal edge that I think further pushes Tyler's creative artistry into some cool directions. Absolutely, I love the album. I will be talking about it in a video like Call Me If You Get Lost in October. Spoilers, or maybe November. Spoilers for that video. I'm having a funky 30s, man, and anybody living in this time, it's a little bit funky for you too. But I've had this sort of like fun bit with that. And Nowhere Forever is this funky jazz odyssey from a group that I think has been consistently good at making some wonky-ass music with a catchy edge in some select moments, but really focuses on some of those catchy ideas and adds a bit of grandeur to that I think takes their sound in a direction that I absolutely love. It still has some madness and some just absolute filthy funk throughout it, but I love the times that it steps away from that and does a little more. I think that Louis and Genevieve are an incredible twosome that have made easily my favorite album of the decade so far. And those were my picks. Do you agree with them? Do you disagree? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, along with your favorite albums that have dropped this decade so far. If you did like this video, though, again, be sure that you gave it a like, and if you want to see more, consider subscribing. I drop 2 to 4 vids a week, depending on what I've got going on. Like I talked about in yesterday's video, this week is going to be a little more dense than normal because I finally got over the hump that was the best games video, so I'll be pulling together some fun shit for you guys that I hope you're excited to see. Thank you again so very much for watching this. I'm going to go up and viral rack you guys with these lots of situations, and I'll see you another day.